Sam. Mad Sam DeStefano, the most wanted torture murderer in the entire history of the FBI. The man every federal agent in America knew by name and couldn't stop. Sam DeStefano wasn't just a mobster. He was something the Chicago outfit used like a weapon against their own people. He kept a torture chamber in his home basement. He invited victims in, chained them up, and took days to finish the job. Ice picks, electric prods, psychological terror that broke men before he ever touched them. The FBI officially classified him as the worst torture murderer in American history. In 1973, someone finally put a shotgun to him in his own garage. It was his brother who pulled the trigger. Sam Giancana, the most powerful mob boss Chicago ever produced, shot 7 times in his own kitchen at midnight, 6 bullets fired in a deliberate circle around his mouth. Sam Giancana ran the Chicago outfit at its absolute peak, controlling politicians, judges, police forces, and reportedly influencing the 1960 presidential election itself. He was so connected that the CIA once approached him to help assassinate Fidel Castro. Then his power faded, his protection disappeared, and on June 19, 1975, someone walked into his Oak Park home while he was cooking sausages and shot him under the chin. Then fired 6 more times in a perfect circle around his mouth. A professional signature. A message that said he had talked too much. William Action Jackson, the most brutally tortured man in the history of American organized crime, hung from a meat hook for 3 days while still alive by the very people he worked for. William Jackson collected debts for the Chicago outfit his entire career. Then they suspected him of talking to the FBI. They didn't shoot him. They didn't make it quick. They abducted him, stripped him, and hung him from a meat hook through his rectum in a meat warehouse. For 3 days they worked on him. Electric cattle prod, ice picks, kneecaps crushed, ribs broken. He was 300 pounds and took everything they had to give. When he finally died, they photographed the body. The pictures still exist. Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano, the most embarrassed man in Mafia history, the boss who personally vouched for an FBI undercover agent and let him walk straight into the heart of the Bonanno crime family. Dominic Napolitano was a respected and feared captain who sponsored a man called Donnie Brasco, who was actually FBI agent Joseph Pistone, living undercover inside the mob for 6 years. When the operation was exposed in 1981, Sonny Black knew exactly what was coming. He handed his jewelry and personal belongings to a friend before his final meeting, because he knew he wasn't coming back. They found his body on Staten Island. Both hands had been cut off at the wrists and placed beside him. His hands had let the wrong man in. Johnny Roselli, the most carefully hidden body in mob history. Legs sawed off, stuffed into a 55-gallon oil drum, wrapped in chains and dropped into a Miami Bay. It still floated back up. Johnny Roselli was one of the most connected mob figures in America, a man with ties to Las Vegas, Hollywood, Cuba, and the CIA itself. In 1976, he was called to testify before a Senate committee investigating the assassination of President Kennedy. He never made it. He was strangled, his legs were sawed off so the body would fit, and the drum was dropped into Dumbfoundling Bay near Miami. A fisherman spotted it floating on the surface 11 days later. The chains weren't heavy enough. Tony Spilotro, the most feared enforcer the Chicago outfit ever sent to Las Vegas, beaten to death with bare hands in a basement by the same men who gave him his power. Tony Spilotro ran Las Vegas for the Chicago mob through the 1970s and early 1980s, controlling the casinos, the streets, and anyone who got in the way. He was untouchable for years. Then he started making mistakes. He was sleeping with the wrong woman, drawing too much attention, and the bosses back in Chicago decided he had become a liability. On June 14, 1986, Tony and his brother Michael were told to come to a meeting in a Bensonville basement, told it was about a promotion. A room full of outfit members was waiting. They beat both brothers to death with their bare hands, then drove the bodies to an Indiana cornfield and buried them 6 feet under. Philip the Chicken Man. Testa. The most explosive mob assassination in Philadelphia history. A nail bomb packed underneath his own front porch, detonated the moment he stepped outside his front door in the morning. Philip Testa became boss of the Philadelphia crime family after Angelo Bruno was killed in 1980. He lasted less than a year. His own underboss and a senior capo had secretly decided he needed to go. They didn't use a gun. They packed a bomb filled with nails and shotgun pellets into the brick wall beneath his front porch and ran a wire to a remote detonator. On March 15, 1981, just before midnight, Testa came home, walked up to his front door, and the bomb detonated directly beneath him. The explosion drove nails through his entire body. He was 56 years old. His successor was arrested within months for ordering the hit. Dutch Schultz, the most talkative dying man in gangster history, shot in a Newark bathroom, spent 22 hours in hospital burning with a 106-degree fever, rambling complete nonsense that detectives sat beside his bed and wrote down word for word. Dutch Schultz was one of the most powerful mob figures in New York, controlling numbers rackets, bootlegging operations, and entire city districts. On October 23, 1935, Murder Inc. hitmen walked into the Palace Chop House in Newark and shot him in the bathroom. He was hit in the stomach and survived long enough to be taken to hospital. What followed was 22 hours of fever-soaked delirium, a 106-degree temperature, a bullet slowly killing him from the inside, and a stream of disconnected rambling that detectives transcribed in full. His last recorded words were, "A boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 Kim." Nobody has ever fully explained what he meant. Angelo Bruno, the most peaceful mob boss in Philadelphia history, a man who genuinely hated violence, shot through the back of his own skull with a shotgun while sitting quietly in his car outside his own front door. Angelo Bruno ran the Philadelphia crime family for over 2 decades and was known as the Gentle Don because he genuinely avoided bloodshed whenever possible. His own people grew frustrated with his refusal to move into more violent and profitable rackets. On March 21, 1980, Bruno was dropped home after dinner by his driver. He sat in the passenger seat for a moment before going inside. Someone walked up behind the car, pressed a shotgun directly behind his right ear, and pulled the trigger. The back of his skull was destroyed instantly. He was 69 years old and had no idea it was coming. His death triggered a decade of chaos in Philadelphia that killed dozens. Carmine Galante, the most photographed mob murder in American history, shot dead on a Brooklyn restaurant patio at lunchtime, cigar still clenched between his teeth in the crime scene photo seen around the world. Carmine Galante was the boss of the Bonanno crime family, and one of the most feared and arrogant figures in the New York mob. He made enemies everywhere he went and trusted almost no one. On July 12, 1979, he was eating lunch on the outdoor patio of Joe and Mary's Italian restaurant in Bushwick, Brooklyn, flanked by 2 bodyguards. 3 masked men walked in, moved through the restaurant, and opened fire. Galante and both men beside him were killed instantly. When crime scene photographs were released, the image that went around the world showed Galante flat on his back on the patio, cigar still perfectly clenched between his teeth, exactly as it had been when he was alive. Salvatore Maranzano, the only man who ever declared himself boss of all bosses of the entire American Mafia, stabbed 6 times, throat slashed, and shot 5 times in his own office, just 5 months after taking the title. Salvatore Maranzano reorganized the entire American Mafia in 1931, ended the Castellano War, declared himself the supreme leader of organized crime in the United States, and modeled himself on Julius Caesar. He was already planning to have Lucky Luciano killed. Luciano moved first. On September 10, 1931, 4 men dressed as government tax agents walked past Maranzano's bodyguards and into his 9th-floor office at 230 Park Avenue in Manhattan. They stabbed him 6 times, slashed his throat from ear to ear, and fired 5 bullets into his body, to make absolutely certain. The man who had just declared himself the most powerful figure in American organized crime was dead within 5 months of taking the title. Albert Anastasia, the most feared killer in American Mafia history, the man who personally ran Murder Incorporated, shot dead in a barber chair at the Park Sheraton Hotel with hot towels over his face, before he could open his eyes or reach for a weapon. Albert Anastasia headed Murder Inc., the organized crime enforcement operation responsible for an estimated 400 to 700 contract killings across America. He was one of the most dangerous men alive. On October 25, 1957, he walked into the barbershop of the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan, sat down in chair number 4, and let the barber drape hot towels across his face. 2 masked gunmen walked in moments later, shoved the barber aside, and opened fire. Anastasia lurched forward into the mirror, knocking over the chair. He was shot 5 times. He died on the barbershop floor. The hotel later repositioned all the barber chairs to face away from the mirror. Joey Gallo, The most unlucky birthday in mob history, shot dead at his own birthday dinner at 4 in the morning in Little Italy, staggered bleeding out onto the street, and died on the pavement before anyone could reach him. Joey Crazy Joe Gallo had just finished 10 years in prison and was trying to rebuild his reputation inside the Colombo crime family. His friends threw him a birthday celebration at Umberto's Clam House on Mulberry Street in the early hours of April 7, 1972, his 43rd birthday. A gunman walked in while he was still eating, opened fire across the restaurant, and hit Gallo multiple times. Gallo managed to get up from the table, stagger through the restaurant, push through the front door, and make it out onto the street outside. He collapsed on the pavement on Mulberry Street and died there. It was his birthday. He was 43 years old.